Hi everyone, welcome back to the Blood Ties podcast. I'm Molly Wansell and I'm here with my father, Geoffrey Wansell.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Blood Ties 2.0. This all started because we had lunch every Saturday and started talking about murder, and that's how all these podcasts came about originally.
Yeah, I also think probably, you did end up veering into true crime.
Yeah. It was kind of almost organic change, really. You know, you segued from one thing into true crime.
It's interesting to think how careers can bend and flex, especially creative careers like yours, depending on what's put in front of you.
I think it's a lot to do with what opportunities you get, and true crime became part of my life 30 years ago when I got asked to do the West book, and it just sort of blossomed from there, really. And then I went on to do the Levi Belfield book back in 2012. And it just sort of escalated.
I know, but I don't think you ever thought you would end up being a true crime specialist, did you?
No, I certainly didn't.
Gracing the bedrooms of people all over the UK on every single Freeview channel.
Yes. It's hard to avoid me if you watch those channels.
It is, you're everywhere.
I am.
Pop-up shop.
People stop me and they say, "You're that chap who does those terrible people." And I always say the same thing. "Oh, no, you don't have to watch." And they say, "Oh, no, it's fascinating."
People love it, don't they?
And a man jumped out of a UPS van last week. I was just coming out of the Garrick and he said, "Hello, stop." I said, "Beg your pardon?" "Yes, yes. What's your name again?" I said, "It's Geoffrey Wansell." Yes, my father loves you." And I said, "Oh, that's very sweet." He said, "Can I have a selfie?" I said, "Of course."
No way.
It's extraordinary.
I love that you had a selfie with someone.
Oh, I get quite a lot of those.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very touching, and also it sort of represents the fact that you kind of want to make what are really quite nasty stories more accessible, at least understandable, rather than it simply being endless goriness and endless horror.
Why do you think it is that it's so fascinating for people?
I think it's particularly fascinating to women.
Okay, you always say this, but
Yeah, I do a bit.
That man just said his dad liked you. So
Yes,
it's not,
that's true.
So let's just say
I'm very
Let's
old
say
people
it's
like
just
me.
interesting to people, which is why I'm asking the question.
Okay, well, I think it's interesting because they want to understand why. That's always the question I get asked the most. Why did X do it? Or why on earth did he do that? Or why on earth did she do that? And the only answer is, well, I can offer suggestions, but no one can be absolutely sure.
And do you think there's a formula for it?
No.
No, I don't think so either. We spent a long time talking about lots of people, and I don't think there is either.
I don't think there's a formula. But
you can't guarantee it, can you, one way or the other?
No, you can't. But what I would say is that as I'm going to go on, as this series develops, I'm going to go on to do Nottingham and Southport. And it's very much in people's minds, events like that. They stick in the mind. And
they're awful, those cases.
They are. They're dreadful. But the one I'm going to start with today is equally dramatic and equally unforgettable.
What are we doing today?
We're doing a man called Kyle Clifford. And would you prefer we called this the Jilted Boyfriend or the Jilted Lover?
Oh. How old is he?
He was born he's 26 at the time of the killings.
Jilted Boyfriend.
Jilted Boyfriend? Okay.
Is that, we're starting now?
We're starting now.
The Jilted Boyfriend.
Jilted Boyfriend.
Here we go.
This all came about because I was listening to the Radio 5 and up came the racing commentator, John Holt. And I thought, gosh, good for him. He's still working and survived what was, I think, a catastrophic tragedy that took the lives of his wife and two of his daughters. And so I thought, let's do the case of the Jilted Boyfriend.
So awful.
It is, but I'll try and make it as accessible as I possibly can.
Okay. It's very recent.
Yes, indeed it is. And it happened, and another reason that I wanted to do this, it happened on my birthday, 2024.
And, oh, right, so nearly a year ago. And also ties into the thing you were talking to me about the other day about crossbows being more prevalently used in the UK now.
And that will come out at the end of this.
Okay.
Well, the man at the centre of this really horrid crime is a man called Kyle Marcus Clifford, who was born on the 5th of April 1998. He was 26, therefore, at the time of the killings. John Hunt survived. He wasn't at home, and so did his eldest daughter, Amy, who wasn't living in the family home at the time. But the family home was in a perfectly nice suburban street in Bushey in Hertfordshire. You couldn't imagine a more peaceful, ordinary, tree-lined, quite a nice house. It had a biggish garden with a pod at the bottom of the garden in which Louise, the youngest of the daughters, of Hunt's daughters, had a dog grooming business. She was a dog groomer. Well, this whole story starts in late June 2024. Louise has been going out with Kyle Clifford for about a year and a half, but she decides on the 26th of June 2024 that, I'm afraid, it's not going to go on anymore. She was fed up. He was a bit arrogant. He was a bit difficult. He was a security guard. He'd been a soldier briefly. And I'll come back to his upbringing in a moment. But she broke up with him. Now, he'd been quite well treated by the family. I think he'd spent the previous Christmas, Christmas 23, with them in the house in Bushey. I mean, he was well known to the family. But I think they all supported Louis' decision to break it off. But unfortunately for her, and indeed for the family, Clifford did not take the breakup well. Indeed, although he may have appeared to be happy about it, he very much wasn't. And in the wake of the breakup, he went out and purchased a crossbow. Now, crossbows, as we've talked about before, do not require any kind of time limit. You can simply walk into a shop and buy a crossbow and bolts to go with it.
And maybe it's useful to just describe, because I think the issue is, I get very detached when I think of a crossbow because it sort of feels like something you'd use in a video game or like a war reenactment.
Well, think of William Tell.
Yeah, that's what I mean, as in they're so kind of ancient. Like, why are they being, like, what would they be used for? Like, why are they being why are they being made and sold?
I think you still use them for killing some kinds of animals and some kinds of birds.
So really it would be a kind of hunting or agriculture thing.
It would.
And it's a big, thick bolt, isn't it?
It's a thick bolt.
It's fired out very, like, and sort of looks like an arrow.
That's right.
I'm sorry, a bow and arrow.
Bow and arrow, yes, but with a big wooden stock.
And it's more compact and I guess very powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the days after the 26th of June breakup, he went out and bought a crossbow and bolts, a butcher knife, some petrol, some duct tape and some rope. He also bought a Glock pistol online, but it wasn't delivered by the time the crime was committed. There can be no doubt that Kyle Clifford meticulously planned his revenge on the family. It is heartbreaking in every way, but the details make it even more so. On the 9th of July 2024, Clifford parked near the Hunt house at about 20 to 2.
In the afternoon?
In the afternoon, 22 in the afternoon. It's all in broad daylight. Then he went to check that John Hunt wasn't in the house, that John Hunt's car wasn't in the driveway of the house. He thought he was working, and in fact it turned out that he was. John worked for both Radio 5 and for Sky Sports, basically as racing commentator. Kyle Clifford goes back to the car and collects his rucksack. The crossbow is on the back seat, covered with a blanket. He leaves the crossbow. He takes the rucksack, but the rucksack includes the butcher's knife. And he rings the doorbell of the Hunt's house at 2:32 that afternoon. Carol Stone opens it. Kyle says, I brought some stuff of Louise's back. I'm returning some stuff of hers. Well, not entirely surprisingly, I mean, after all, he had spent Christmas there. Carol Stone invites him in. She let him in, and he stabbed her with the butcher's knife. He took it out of his rucksack and stabbed her repeatedly, right there and then, in an act of, I think just grotesque savagery, depravity. I mean, the woman had done nothing but be kind to him. There was no animosity towards Carol, who was 61, nor really was there any animosity to anybody else in the family. It's just pure, cold, clear, ugly revenge. The fact that he stabbed her was captured on the doorbell camera that they had. And even more horrifying, he watched her die before he went back to the car to collect the crossbow. He goes back to the car at 3:07. He then goes back to the house with the crossbow. Now, Louise is working in her dog grooming pod at the bottom of the garden, completely oblivious to what's happened in the house. The people took their dogs. There has a side gate, so they didn't have to go through the front door to get to Louise's pod in the garden. And they had been taking their dogs perfectly ordinary. We're talking about a suburban street in Hertfordshire, which is just to the north of London. Calm, ordinary. It was quite a sunny day. It was July, plenty of light. So then Kyle Clifford remains in the house with the body of Carol. And at 4:11, Louise went back to the house. We don't know exactly why, but screaming is heard in the neighbourhood, but nobody takes much attention. I mean, nobody really knew what was going on. And that stopped at about 4:16, about 5 minutes of on and off screaming. Well, the screaming was the fact that Louise was being captured by Kyle Clifford, who tied her hands and feet and gagged her. And, as was subsequently proven in court, raped her. This is the Jilted Boyfriend. At 5:30, he left the house again to collect Louise's phone from the pod, and he sends a message on it to her dad, John, to come back soon. By this point, Clifford is clearly intent on killing the entire family. Tragically, just before 6:45, remember, Louise is still tied up, having been raped. Just before 6:45, 1844, her elder sister Hannah, who is still living at home, phones her mum to tell her that she's on her way, she'll be there in a minute or two. Well, her mum, of course, doesn't pick up the call, but it simply incites Clifford. Hannah arrives at just after 7:10, and she walks in, doesn't quite immediately connect what's happening, and Clifford shoots her in the back with a crossbow. She screams at him. She isn't killed immediately. In fact, she manages to call her boyfriend, a man called Alex Klein, asking him to call the police because Clifford was tying her up. At 18:54, a couple of minutes later, he shoots Hannah again and Louise, again with the crossbow, and leaves the house at once. It's entirely probable that Hannah found both her mother's body and Louise's before she called 999 herself. And indeed, she was still alive when the ambulance and armed police arrived. But sadly, she didn't survive. Clifford disappeared. The police appealed for him because obviously they knew who he was. I mean, Hannah had obviously told her boyfriend, and when she rang 999. He drove towards his home in Enfield. He lived in the suburb of London called Enfield, to the northwest or northeast, and eventually stopped on the way, stopped in a lay-by, and then ended up at about 7:30 or so, parking near the Lavender Hill Cemetery, where he spent the night. And at some point during the night, he created a noose with the rope that he'd bought, and attached it to a branch, but it was too feeble. It would never have worked. The branch would have broken. It wasn't. Anyway, shortly before 6 o'clock the following day, the 10th of July, armed police and a police dog find Clifford, and he shoots himself in the chest with the crossbow. This former security guard and briefly member of the Queen's Dragoon Guards made I'm afraid, poor job of killing himself. In fact, he didn't. All he did was paralyse himself from the waist down. One of the most extraordinary things about this case is that Clifford's brother Bradley, who was a little older than he was also a convicted murderer, having been sentenced to life with a minimum of 23 years at the Old Bailey in 2018. He was in jail at the time of the murders, having killed a 19-year-old in his car and knocked him off a moped. That, I think, for me, is one of the most horrifying cases I can imagine. The calculated, premeditated killing of a family who've done nothing but welcome you into their home, and you can only think of the kind of brutal revenge and death that you have set in train. I'm not in any doubt that had John Holt come home, Clifford would have killed Holt as well. In December 2024, Clifford appeared by video link at Cambridge Crown Court when he pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of murder, false imprisonment, possession of an offensive weapon. But on the 22nd of January 2025, he changed his plea to guilty to all those charges, but not guilty to the rape of Louise. He claimed, and the defence claimed on his behalf, that they'd had consensual sex on the 23rd of June. At the trial at the Old Bailey in March 2025, the prosecution described that theory as untenable. I think I might have used a rather ruder word than untenable. And indeed, Clifford was found guilty of the rape, and he was given 3 whole life terms for the 3 murders, with 20 years to run concurrently for the rape. He was not in court to hear the sentence. Something we know is being considered at the moment, that someone found guilty of a serious crime like murder has to attend the sentencing. But at that point, it wasn't. And Judge called Clifford soaked in self-pity, who held women in utter contempt. Now, I think that's entirely reasonable, because it strikes me that now, Clifford has absolutely horrible life in front of him. He's in a wheelchair. He's unable to look after himself, but he's in prison for the rest of his life. And remember, he's in his 20s. So that's a long period in jail. That's no excuse. That's not asking anyone to forgive him or let him off or any of those. But there is a moment, isn't there, when it brings us back to that old saying, did he really deserve to live? Well, he's going to live at the public expense at the cost of probably £80,000 to £90,000 a year for a very long time.
No, don't know.
It's the same moot point that we've talked about many times before, but it's not the only crossbow case you and I have done.
No, we did another one.
Stephen Griffith.
Yeah, I remember that one was in a
we did
flat and in a car.
That was we did it in 2018, in April 2018, and that was a case when he claimed that he was eating parts of the sex workers that he'd killed. We called it the crossbow cannibal.
Yeah, I know, I remember.
Remember? It was happening. He was a PhD student studying criminology. Does that
still violence towards women, isn't it?
It's all violence towards women, I'm afraid. And this is again another of those cases when it's very difficult to explain why anyone should take such a monstrous set of actions when all you've done, all Louise has said is, I'm afraid we're not going on. I mean, it is just, it's breathtaking in its ugliness and its depravity.
Do you think, just trying to think about, do we think that happens because people don't learn how to express themselves? I think one of the things that causes people to act out is, well, this is not, I think this is a proven fact, right? That if we don't learn how to express our emotions or to feel our emotions and acknowledge them, that it will come out in some other way, right? Whether it's addiction or, I don't know, lashing out, whatever. It could be lots and lots of things. Similarly, I can relate to a feeling of be something upsetting me in a way that makes my whole body feel flooded with an emotion, and that person must be feeling it to the 1,000,000th degree. But then of course there is I appreciate this additional element, which is then you're so enraged that you meditatively go out and buy all of these awful things and plan to cause.
Yes,
there
is obviously an element of that, but it's also fair to say that Clifford, as a young man, had been very aggressive, very arrogant. I know little about the family, but the fact that they've got 2 brothers in jail for murder seems to me to say something about parenting. And it also seems to me that he had this rather sort of checkered period as briefly a soldier, and then he was a security guard.
But it must have been quite good at hiding it if they dated for a year. This family, as you said, let him into their home.
Yes.
And,
he must have presented as a perfectly ordinary, upstanding bloke, providing he got what he wanted. But the moment he stopped getting what he wanted, he was a very different person.
And also, that's a real, certain type of skill in itself, isn't it?
It is.
Masking that much.
Well, if you're trying to, how can one put it, groom the family into liking you, I suppose you get exceptionally angry if it doesn't work.
Yeah. That will be from being dysregulated from something that happened to you as a child.
It's possible. I wish I knew more about the background to the family. I don't. That's something I would like. That would, for me, would be a very interesting set of investigations.
That was really sad.
It is, I'm afraid, a really, really sad story, and prompted because I happened to have that day as my birthday, and also because I happened to hear John on the radio recently. It brought it back to me, and it just takes your breath away, and I have not one iota of sympathy for Kyle Clifford, not one. I feel nothing but anger about him for committing the crime.
It's just baffling, isn't it? Because there's sort of sometimes when those things happen, you think, how can these things still be happening?
Yes, you would have thought.
Why is that person able to buy a crossbow and order a Glock on the internet and get, but just anyone can have access to a knife, like that's not.
Yes. Well, the argument about knives will go on and on. We've seen some recently, there's been some very interesting research done about kitchen knives, that they shouldn't have sharp ends. They should all be made with blunt ends. So instead of always having a sharp end, you create knives with blunt ends, which I think might well eventually happen. But what it has done is provoke the government to reconsider how crossbows are sold.
Why are they sold at all? Like, I literally, unless it's a specialist use, I cannot imagine why on earth. Nobody in London or the surrounding areas, if it's like a farmer somewhere, maybe. I can't think why.
Where would you go? I'm fascinated to know where you go. I've never seen a crossbow shop.
But why would you? Is just no one should be being sold. Like, why would we sell something like that without the requirement of like license or
proper
things?
Licensing? Yes. Well, that's clearly one of the. That's going to be, I think, one of the probably the best outcomes of this horrible case. That it provokes us to wonder as a society how we deal with rejection and how we deal with, breakup and things of that nature.
Well, it's not just that though, is it? It's just it's emotional. It's that's what similarly when young people get into, are stabbed and this is they're offended, jilted, upset, being disrespected. It's an emotional response. Well, that's what I'm saying. What we're not teaching people is how do you express yourself? How do you create a space where it's like, it's okay to say, I feel really bad right now. I don't feel okay. Because if we give young people the space to say those things, do we help stop that happening?
Well, one hopes we might. But the other one that immediately occurs to me, Mo, is the terrible schoolgirl who was killed in Croydon. She got off the bus by the boyfriend, and she was the friend, and she was said, "Oh, you've got to leave her alone,"
Yeah.
And they were carrying a teddy bear, and that was again jilted.
I know,
But that's the case of Kyle Clifford, which I apologise for being so gloomy, but. Sometimes these cases just take your breath away. That one takes mine away.
The Jilted Boyfriend. Do you want to tell me something jolly? Because that was so miserable.
Well, something jolly. Yes. I'm watching The Waterfront.
What's that?
It's on Netflix. It's a show about a crime family set in New Haven.
What a surprise.
No, North Carolina, I beg your pardon. North Carolina.
Okay.
It's like Succession, only with crime.
Okay.
Yes,
good.
It's
so jolly then.
It's super jolly.
Yeah.
I'm always watching really jolly shows.
Yeah. You did watch the Submersible doc, though.
I did watch.
I told you to watch
it.
it.
I watched it.
Yeah.
Titan. Yes, it's extraordinary.
So
quite extraordinary,
right? Wild.
The man was clearly bonkers. I mean, completely mad.
Bonkers.
Yes, what's extraordinary, he persuades these people to go with him.
I know.
Right, crikey.
Can you imagine?
No.
Would you ever have got in there?
No. Can you imagine him saying, "Don't worry, if there's alarm rings, don't worry about anything, it'll all be fine." Oh, really? I'm off.
Jeffrey would have been out.
I wouldn't have gone near the thing anyway. So,
can you imagine?
But it is extraordinary. Yeah. But I suppose what doing this, Mo, we're talking about it at the beginning, what doing this does is I think it makes me love life more, not less. I know I'm always talking about really terrible things, but it makes me appreciate life in really much, much more because I know how easy it is to lose it. So that's a positive result.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Geoffrey. And also just a reminder that you can get in touch with us via our Instagram, which is bloodties_pod. And we have an email address, which is bloodties.podcast@gmail.com. And you can find all that info on the show notes. We'd love for you to get in touch.
And you can get in touch with me if you go to my website. If you Google me, my website comes up and there is a contact.
And you can
which is an easy way of finding me.
Perfect. Well, thank you to all the people that help us, our producer Peter, my brother Dan who did the music, my friend George who drew our caricature, to Geoffrey who does all the hard work, and to you the listeners, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening. It's a privilege to be able to talk to you, and as this show proves beyond doubt, bad things happen to good people, so do be careful out there.